Well, it's been a few years now since I had my battle with cancer, and I'm still recovering, but I'm mostly back to life now. And for a while, I've been wanting to make a video series on what it's like to have cancer, to share my experience, to provide some information to other people, some helpful tips and suggestions to help those who have just been diagnosed to kind of know the road ahead and to provide wisdom and to provide hope. And for the most part, I just didn't really know where to start with creating a video series like that about my experience. And so I figured I'd just start at the beginning. And so today I wanted to make a little video just talking about what it's like to be diagnosed with blood cancer. So in February of 2016, I was living in a small island called Koh Tao, Thailand. And there I was running a small for-profit marine conservation center that I ran myself. So I was working constantly. I mean, I took 1 or 2 days off a month and worked 9, 10 hour days, sometimes 12-hour days. But I really enjoyed it. It wasn't stressful. It was physically hard, but mentally it was a wonderful job. We were surrounded by people I loved, and all my students and my staff were just a family to me. So I was very supportive, wonderful environment, and to be honest, it was the peak of my life. My program that I'd started in 2007, by 2016, it was taking off. Everything was just going in the right direction. Everything in my life was just right on track. It was the peak of my life. And around the end of January 2016, I just started to get kind of sick sometimes. I didn't feel good. I felt fatigued. I would finish diving and just be completely beat. I would go home around 5 or 6 o'clock, which is very abnormal for me. Normally, I would go home around 9 o'clock, work in the office till late. And at that time, my wife was living on the mainland taking care of our son. So I was alone with our dog, and I'd go home at 6 o'clock and I wouldn't even eat. I'd just feed the dog and I'd just pass out. And I wouldn't wake up again until the next morning around 8 or 9. And this went on for a while, and then I started noticing that I had very large bruises or kind of like goose eggs forming on my shins, on my legs. And they would come up for a few days. It'd be like a large swollen bruise that was quite painful, and it would happen more or less spontaneously. I couldn't figure out what the cause would be. And then they'd go away and come up somewhere else. And I went to the doctor and asked, we don't really have doctors on our island. It was like a glorified pharmacist that didn't really have pharmacy training. But she would say, oh, well, you're an active guy. You're probably just kicking things and not realizing it, and put my mind at ease for a moment. And then I started one day, I had peed blood, and I went to that same pharmacist who was literally the only choice on our island, and she gave me like Midol, which is for women who are menstruating. And so it was like, well, this just isn't working. I can't get any help I need here on my island. So I talked to my wife, and I was going back to the mainland quite regularly to see her, so we arranged for me to get a blood test over the weekend. So I told my team, like, hey guys, I'm going to be gone over the weekend, and I'll be back Monday. I'm going to the mainland for a little while. And they all said, great, get looked at. We know you haven't been feeling well. Hope you get some good news and we can get this done. Maybe a course of antibiotics or something. So I went to the mainland, got it there at like 5 a.m., drove my motorcycle to our house, met up with her. We went and got the blood test. They took the blood, and I was feeling pretty well that day. But we went out and ate breakfast while we were waiting for the results, and started walking back, and I felt a little bit just kind of lightheaded. Didn't feel 100%. It's almost like was on drugs or something when I was walking back to the hospital, like a dissociative. Everything just felt like I was 1 or 2 degrees removed from my body, and I remember that being kind of peculiar. And then we walked back towards the hospital, and there was an ambulance outside the hospital with the doctor standing next to it, and they were looking for us. And when we came down the block, they came running to us, and Mr. Scott, you need to come in right away. So I knew it was something serious and was, slightly alarmed. They showed me the blood work and said that it was leukemia. And I had heard leukemia before, but I didn't know anything about it. And my mind kind of went to like tuberculosis. I'm like, okay, that's serious, but it's curable with some antibiotics, so let's just get the drugs I need and I'll get on my way. And he looked at me like baffled, that I wasn't grasping the seriousness of the situation. So he left me alone to, kind of look it up on my phone for a minute. And while he said he was going to go make the arrangements that were necessary. When he came back, then he told, I had looked and realized that it was cancer, blood cancer. And then he had said that they need to begin treatment immediately. It's quite different with blood cancer. That's kind of common, as I understand now, with blood cancer. With many cancers, the doctor might diagnose it and say, okay, like go home, come back in a month, and we'll discuss a treatment plan for you. But with leukemia, it's the day, with most people I've talked to, the day that you get diagnosed, you go straight to the ER. So your whole life is upended. And that's exactly what happened to me. They took me to the ER, but the hospital I got my blood check was a very nice hospital, a private hospital, and I didn't have, my insurance didn't cover it. I had insurance for diving and accidents and stuff like that, but not for this. And so I had to go to the state, or the country, the government hospital, and get treated there. And so they drove me in an ambulance over there, and they got me in there into the ER, and they put me on a bed. There was no other foreigners there, and there was nobody who spoke English in the whole place. And my Thai's good for ordering food. I can teach classes on the ocean. I did my master's in Thailand. Like I can hold my own in a conversation about the topics that I'm involved in, but I didn't know any of the medical verbiage at all. So it was a struggle, and my wife had to go get our son and stuff like that from school, so I was left alone there to dwell on all of the gravity of the situation with this new diagnosis of cancer at the age of 32 in the prime of my life. And it wasn't until about 7 o'clock that evening, so I had the full day in the ER and then in the general population kind of ward. There they had a women's ward and a men's ward, so the men's floor was an entire floor of men who were sick with various things, all in one big room. There was about 250 of us in one big room, and the beds were just space enough for someone to walk between them. And a guy shows up, and he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt and shorts, and he's sweaty and red-faced, and he says, "Hello, I am the only hematologist in all of Saratani province, and I'm drunk." And he said that he was at a party and they called and he came in and he's given me a handful of medications and he'll see me on Monday. This was on Saturday. So I was just left there until Monday. My wife would bring me food and take care of me. But yeah, it went from me enjoying the prime of my life to being in the hospital with cancer in just a single morning. Completely unexpected, and I ended up being in the hospital for, on that time, it was a total of about 40 days in all before I got out of the hospital, and I was transferred to different hospitals. And I think I'll go a lot more into that in another video about that experience, my first days in the hospital. But mostly what I want to talk about in this video is just how disruptive to your life a leukemia diagnosis is. It's not something that the doctors can just tell you, okay, well, we can treat it later. Or a lot of people, when they get cancer, they have a decision. Do I want to go chemo, or do I want to try other alternative routes? Do I want to try to strengthen my immune system for a while with herbs and nutrients and supplements? Do I want to try that route? And then can I have time to research the chemotherapy and research this cancer and research alternative care methods? With leukemia, you don't have time for any of that. When I was diagnosed with leukemia, 56% of my blood cells were cancer cells. They were called blast cells. And so if I had just not gone to the doctor or had tried to do anything on my own, it would have been a week or two, and then I would have most likely passed away. So for those just getting diagnosed with leukemia and dealing with the stress of all your life just stopping in a single moment, know that there's others that have had that experience, and it is normal for those of us who get diagnosed with a blood cancer to have that type of experience. It's not a time to, there's no time to waste. It's not a time to hesitate or to debate. You really have to get going on the treatment immediately, and that's the best way to deal with this type of cancer, because with AML, the type acute myeloid leukemia like I had, death can come very quickly. But it is a very strong cancer. It's very acutely dangerous, but it is also a cancer that can be cured. So if you've come to this video because you've been recently diagnosed, know that there is hope. There's a lot of treatment options out there. The road ahead will be difficult. There's no sugarcoating it. It is a very difficult journey, as you'll see as I post more of these videos over time. But it's one that you can get through. It's one that a lot of us have gotten through, and the methods, the medications, the techniques, they continually evolve with new treatments coming online literally every month. And so even going through it now is much better than going through it 5 years ago when I went through it. So I hope that this video series will bring you hope. I wish you all the best in your journey with this, and just know that you can get through this. So thank you, and I look forward to bringing you guys more videos about my journey in the coming days and weeks. Thank you again.